I think that we are caged by our cultural programming and that this is the most powerful imprisoning factor in our lives. That if we could train ourselves simply to remember our dreams, psychedelics would become obsolete. If we could train ourselves simply to pay attention to our ordinary states of consciousness as we live through our days and nights, culture is a mass hallucination. And when you step outside the mass hallucination, you see it for what it is worth. Language is partially the key here. We cannot move into a reality that we cannot describe. If we can't describe a world, we can't be there. And so the interesting place to be is at the cutting edge of language. And it's interesting that the legacy of the 1960s is a legacy of language evolution. I mean, concepts like ego trip, vibe, bummer, so forth and so on. I mean, we sneer at these concepts, but there was no word for these things before. Once there is a word, then that word is like a stepping stone out into the fog. And as long as we let the establishment set the language agenda, we will be imprisoned in the tiny, rather pedestrian world of consumerism and schlocko values that the establishment has prepared for us. So the way I think of these psychedelics are different. Psychedelics, or a different way, is that they're catalysts for the imagination. Catalysts to say what has never been said, to see what has never been seen, to draw, paint, sing, sculpt, dance, and act what has never before been done, to push the envelope of creativity and language. And what's really important is, I call it the felt presence of direct experience, which is a fancy term which just simply means we have to stop consuming our culture. We have to create culture. Don't watch TV. Don't read magazines. Don't even listen to NPR. Create your own road show. The nexus of space and time where you are now is the most immediate sector of your universe. And if you're worrying about Michael Jackson or Bill Clinton or somebody else, then you are disempowered. You're giving it all away to icons.
Ancestors, they had come across the plants that do alter consciousness.
In about 2 million years, the human cortex tripled in size and the brain exploded over a ridiculously short span of evolutionary time. 2 million years is nothing when it comes to evolution. What triggered that?
In the late 1970s, Terence Mckenna and his brother Dennis Mckenna were the first that
proposed the stoned ape hypothesis. It is known now that 22 primates, 23, including us, consume mushrooms. And the idea was our ancestors, they came out of the trees and went across the savannah, would be tracking animals that were pooping. Well, in the subtropics, the most common mushroom coming out of those cow patties is Psilocybe cubensis, a potent magic mushroom.
One thing that mushrooms and other psychedelics do reliably is they induce synesthesia. Synesthesia is the perception of one sensory modality in another. Hearing colors, for example, or seeing music. Experiences, and you have to put yourself in their place and imagine what the impact of such an experience must have been on an early hominid.
These magic mushrooms open up the floodgates of information you receive. Basically, you can think of it as a contact fluid between the synapses within the brain. Wow, what a competitive advantage, especially if you're working with the geometry of weapons or having to put together something that will give you a better chance of survival. The fact that this happened not once, not twice, but millions upon millions of times over millions of years is a very plausible explanation for the tripling of the brain 2 million years ago.
It's not so simple to say that they ate psilocybin mushrooms and suddenly the brain mutated. I think it's more complex than that, but I think it was a factor. It was like a software to program this neurologically modern hardware to think, to have cognition, to have language. Because language is essentially synesthesia. Language is an association with inherently meaningless sound, except that it's associated with the complex of meaning. A great deal of the brain's real estate, you might say, is devoted to the generation and/or the comprehension of language. Those neural structures are not found in our ancestors. That's a human trait, to have so much physiology devoted to generating and understanding language. And that's a reflection of